Good afternoon from the West Coast.
Good evening from the heartland.
The Heartland.
Yeah.
That's what we call it, not flyover country.
Hell yeah. Dude, the most gratifying part of working with you is knowing that you couldn't find anybody in San Francisco.
That I can say what? What?
That you had to go to Indiana. Like, there should be somebody out in San Francisco who could do my job, but there isn't.
Hell no. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Nah, man. To find the real quality talent in my business, no, you got to go to Indiana.
Yeah.
Apparently, that's where I found you. So I just assume that's what that means, that Indiana is a wellspring of media talent.
Michael Jackson, James Dean, Larry Bird. Yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah,
not bad. That's right. Yeah. Just Michael Jackson and Larry Bird just alone, those two right there.
Yeah.
Damn. Larry Bird, let me say this right now. Larry Bird was very clearly the second greatest basketball player of all time.
Well, every time he went up against Jordan, he beat him until he had that back injury.
And he might have been the best.
Yeah.
I'm open to arguments that he was the best, but he is absolutely no worse than second. If you've watched Larry Bird play at all, you know what I'm talking about. The guy was close to a perfect basketball player with, very little jumping ability, not much speed, not tremendously strong, but he was just absolutely brilliant as a basketball player. And of course, he is underestimated. Why? Because we live in a racist society, Mr. Weimer. We live in an anti-white racist society. And I mean the society of my lifetime.
Yeah.
The society we've lived in since the 1960s. Of course it's anti-white.
Well, Larry Bird was also racist. He would always get mad if he had a white person guarding him. He'd say, "Come on, you guys aren't serious. You're sticking a white boy on me?"
He saw it as an insult.
Yeah.
That's great. I didn't know that. That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he was amazing. Everyone should go watch some Larry Bird right now. Or after the show. But go watch some Larry Bird after the show. You'll see.
So the way to solve the race problem in America is for everybody to just watch reaction videos on YouTube, because the best reactors are all black and the best content is white. So watching LeBron fans react to highlights of Larry Bird is racial harmony right there.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of No Life Shaq. You know No Life Shaq? He's a reactor.
No Life Shaq. No. I think I've seen some of his stuff.
I think he's kind of the king of reaction videos. He's considered to be. The guy has the most amazing personality. He is so open and happy about everything and curious. And this is why I actually heard about No Life Shaq from someone who's been on the show, who is a PhD, who is a total intellectual, bi-coastal elite white guy intellectual. He's even Jewish, but he's a huge fan of No Life Shaq because of that. Because No Life Shaq is genuinely curious about everything, even if it's a song by some white rock band of the 1970s. Like, the best stuff he does is he reacts to like Led Zeppelin songs and stuff like that, and he just loves it. He goes crazy because he's never heard them before. But it's an interesting genre. Who else is big in that genre?
Oh, my favorites, I just pulled them up. Asia and BJ. Couples are always fun. The Cartier family, I love them. But yeah, look right now, search up Rockstar Nickelback reaction, and you will see just dozens of black people listening to Rockstar by Nickelback and going, "Hell yeah, that's my shit. Send me more shit like this. I love that stuff." And you, white hipster, are not cool, thinking that Nickelback sucks, thinking that they're the musical version of Guy Fieri. Every Nickelback concert is awesome. They give out free shots and they sing great, fun songs, and everybody knows how to have a good time.
Did I just hear my music expert friend say that Nickelback is awesome?
Nickelback is awesome. They always were. They were a little overplayed on the radio, so everybody hated them. And then some comedians got famous saying that they suck, and everybody copied that take. But Nickelback's a good time, man.
Yeah, I never understood that. I never understood why Nickelback was so much worse than any other pop rock band ever. That they were just obviously terrible. I mean, I listened to their songs many times, like we all have, and I never understood it at all. I have a friend, actually, a friend of mine is the president of their record label.
Oh yeah.
So I got some inside scoop on them. Yeah, they're I think they're still on Roadrunner Records, but it's a metal label, but they have it's metal plus Nickelback, and they make all of their money on Nickelback. But yeah, I mean, what's not to like? I like anthemic songs, like rock songs, anthem like U2, you know, Big Country, if you remember them from the 80s. That's maybe my favorite band of all time. The Jam, but big sweeping emotional anthems. That's what I like. I like rock that sounds like we're calling me to war.
You like Queen?
No, hate Queen.
No, not wow.
Queen's fucking bullshit.
Okay.
No, I heard the lead singer was gay, and I'm just not into it.
Yeah, he was. He was also straight though. He also banged girls. I mean,
did he? Freddie?
Yeah, he was bi. He was bi.
Really? Boy.
Yeah.
He seemed very gay to me. But no, the 70s rock I don't really like. So I know this is going to be confusing to people. I guess emo is the word I was missing there in my anthemic. So I like emo rock. You know, big swelling waves of emotion and, you know, like chants and yeah, but like I don't like Pink Floyd, Queen. I don't really like Led Zeppelin. Who else is there from the 70s?
Yeah,
all those bands.
All of them.
Don't like them.
My Chemical Romance. You sound like you like My Chemical Romance.
I don't know, maybe. Okay. Can't stand Bruce Springsteen, Elton John. There's something wrong with 70s rock. I don't like it. I love all the rock before the 70s and after the 70s, but there's something about that decade. I know that a lot of people who are listening are gonna hate me and think that I'm crazy. They think that that's the best decade for rock music, and they might be right. Now, the musicianship of the bands, right, in the 70s is unparalleled. I agree. But I mean, they could play their instruments better than anybody ever. You know, sort of the art rock movement. I don't think it jams. It's just doesn't move me.
I'll say this.
Sorry.
I'm not going to excoriate you for your opinions, but the best 70s bands made their best albums in the late 60s, in my opinion. Like, okay. I like Black Sabbath's early work. I like Cream's early work. I like Led Zeppelin's first album. I like the experimental age of the 70s where they were playing blues really loud and they were playing jazz and they were experimenting and creating this shit. And then the 70s, they kind of perfected it and made it a product. But I like the energy of the late 60s a lot.
Yeah, I love the 60s. Totally, the music from the 60s. But the other thing about the 70s is if you're really into 1970s rock bands, that means that you were spending a lot of time not listening to soul in the 70s, which is the greatest music ever created, 1970s soul. I mean, if you were busy listening to these like intellectual British rock bands when you could have been listening to Marvin Gaye and Al Green, I can't fully respect you.
Yeah.
And I mean,
yeah.
I really can't. I can't fully respect you as a person.
And for you music nerds out there, Marvin Gaye is as conceptually dense and intricate as Pink Floyd.
I mean, what's going on as an album, certainly, I think is quite complex. I'm not a musician, so I don't know for sure, but it seems that way to me. It has some of the elements of the art rock bands of the early 70s. What's going on, I think, was 72, 73. But yeah, I mean, Let's Get It On is clearly objectively the greatest song ever made. And so I don't know if you're not going to listen to that and worship that and spend your time listening to dudes screech into a microphone and like play, 10-minute long guitar solos. We're not going to get along. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Everybody out there. Because I know a lot of people who listen to this show are huge 70s rock fans. I know. I know this is not going well, but just try to bear with me and go listen to some Marvin Gaye or Al Green in the meantime, or Angie Stone. There's so many.
Yeah.
Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. There's so much good stuff out there. I'll say that I don't like how 70s rock gets put on a pedestal. I'll agree with you there, that there's always a 70s rock radio station everywhere, and like there isn't a soul station in most places. Like
yeah.
Like
Bohemian Rhapsody. Like, do you think that's good listening?
It's white. It's
hey, we're not racist here. Come on now.
No, it's a great programmatic adventure and story. It's Queen, I think, is for little kids. Like, I think it's great musicianship, really well done, but like, you know, their concepts don't cut actually that deep. It's, you know, it's super emotional and great, but like, you know, most of their songs I can imagine being sung by Sesame Street very well.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. That's really interesting, and I agree with that. That's why their songs make it into stadiums.
Mm-hmm.
The clearly the lowest common denominator music is what is played at football games. I think we can all agree on that, and that's who Queen became. And I think that makes sense. Music for children and football fans.
Mm-hmm. But
it's not a great.
All of them though are world-class musicians. All of them. And super creative, super.
I mean, was Freddie Mercury opera trained?
He had to be. Yeah,
he sure sounds like it.
All of them are classically trained. All of them.
Now, let me say this before people get weird ideas. Even though I don't like their music, I absolutely love Freddie Mercury as a person, and the fact that he was so out at that time in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s when it was in Britain illegal, and they fucking forcibly castrated people, men who were gay during that time, and all sorts of things. I mean, George Michael. That's what happened to George Michael. He got arrested more than once for having sex in public places when he was just cruising. He was a great, though both those guys, George Michael and Freddie Mercury, were heroes of mine. Some of the best ever. Really brave, really forward, really out front about who they were as artists, as people, as gay men. And we don't have that anymore. We don't have people like that anymore who are brave in that way.
We got some. They're all shit posters, but we got some. In this age, it's tough out there. And like, the saddest thing is to see those icons become commodified by record labels, and to see them try to engineer that out of young talent who aren't that organically. It's really sad.
Yeah, I mean, the music industry, the industry is basically bankrupt creatively, I think. And I mean the labels, the system, the structure. There's a ton of great music being performed and recorded and listened to, you know, on Spotify. And there's all sorts of bands who are making a living because of Spotify, who couldn't have made a living before. And that's wonderful. But the industry itself, which used to control almost all of the musical output in this country, is horrendous. I mean, the top 10, top 20 is stuff, as I've said many times, hip hop we know is just abysmal. But even a lot of rock is just so dumb now. Just so dumb. I mean, there's very little thought put into these things. There's very little sort of cultural sophistication or intellectual heft or anything like that. The beats are the rhythms, the beats, the melodies are all retread pretty much. We've heard them all a million times. It's bad, but you know, thankfully there are a lot of bands who can make a living now because of the streaming services. And so we have a whole new music industry. And I'd actually like to see, I've seen one study about this, but the number, I'd really like to know, that you might know this, how many musicians make a middle class living now? on the music? I'll bet it's a much bigger number than it was 20 years ago.
There is, yeah. There's a lot of people out there who can really scrounge together, a average salary out of their art that couldn't do it. Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, before the streaming services, you were either a multimillionaire or you were poor if you were a musician, right? Mm-hmm. You either made it and you made it big, or you didn't make it at all. But now there are lots of people who can just make a decent living as professional musicians. Mm-hmm. I think that's fantastic, and that's underappreciated, what the internet has done for music, because people often talk about it as a negative effect, but it's a wonderful effect. It undercut the music industry, which sucked, and we all knew it sucked, and has allowed people to support themselves.
Yeah, the problem is you have to be everything all at once as one person to successfully pull it off. So the best people who are independents are essentially marketing geniuses like Soulja Boy and Lil B. So like people who are entrepreneurial and disciplined and have a good solid output and communicate, really well, those are the people who can make the living. But there's a lot of artists who are just really good at playing their instruments, really good at writing songs, and they don't give a shit about numbers and math and doing their taxes and making sure that they get paid for stuff. They're not prepared to handle that, and they do need people to help them out with that. So that's where we're at.
Sure.
Yeah.
Soulja Boy.
Yeah.
That guy. This is a story. So what did he do again? What was his innovation?
Well,
in terms of marketing,
his hit was Crank That Soulja Boy. He made that on Fruity Loops that he probably pirated when he was 16. So
right.
Like he made the song completely all on his own. And then I guess he was a MySpace guy. And he was the first guy on YouTube. He was like the first rapper where his song got really viral on YouTube. So this was like 06.
He basically, didn't he sort of invent self-promotion on the internet for musicians? He was the pioneer for a lot of this stuff, wasn't he?
Yes. Soulja Boy did it first. Yeah.
He kind of invented the whole game that everyone plays now. Mm-hmm. And he's like a hood rat from, where is he from?
I forget, but people make fun of him
Deep
for
South?
it. Like, yeah. I think he's a Southern guy. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a country dude.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got a lot of people could not understand him. I mean, a lot of people in this country could not understand Soulja Boy, what he's saying, because his accent is so thick. That guy basically reinvented the music industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, somebody in the chat said, don't ask what kind of music. He used fake names on LimeWire. So, like, you would download a song off of LimeWire illegally, thinking it was something else, and you got Crank That Soulja Boy. So, these are, like, lack of a better term, renegade music marketing strategies. Like, you're going to get my song whether you want to or not. You're going to know who I am. And I'm going to, it's that kind of hustling mentality that made him big.
I mean, anybody who pulled themselves up from that background, you probably lived in public housing. I mean, if you live in public housing in the South and you make anything of yourself, you're my hero. It's remarkable. I mean, someone who couldn't make it through high school, I'm sure, certainly could never make it into a college, no doubt, who turns out to be a master businessman. And most importantly, he pointed the way for countless people, countless musicians, to make a living. He made it possible. He showed them how to do it. I mean, what could be better, to make it so that creative artists can make a living doing their art? That's one of the greatest contributions to society I can imagine. That's this little dude from the hood did that. Soulja Boy. Everyone go check him out.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I guess we should say
enough music.
Yeah. Damar Hamlin. He woke up. He's doing well, so that's great to hear. He's holding his family's hand. He's alive, which doesn't happen a lot from cardiac arrest. So it's great to hear.
Yeah. So I'm glad you asked to talk about this, because I didn't think we would, but I kind of do want to talk about it, because and I'm still trying to figure out my feelings about it, my thoughts about it. So when I saw it, when it happened on Friday night or Monday night, this had happened to me many times before. I've watched football my whole life, and it's happened in other sports too, but especially in football, where for a moment you think that someone will either die or be paralyzed for life after some play and some hit, and they're lying on the field. And I've seen this happen half a dozen times, maybe, when I was watching games. And thankfully, none of those people has been paralyzed or killed. But in the moment, and I know I'm a sensitive guy, but I cry. It is really disturbing to me. It is really upsetting to me, even though I don't know these people at all. They're just guys on a TV screen in a football uniform. But there is something about that cuts deeply. And I think I've heard other men, and probably women too, but sports fans talk about this feeling that they had about Damar Hamlin. You can just sort of see it. You could see lots of people on Twitter and elsewhere just being very genuinely upset about it. And it's sort of nice, especially since he's going to be okay, it looks like. It's nice, I think, to stop for a moment and not think about what's important in life, but to check in with our humanity, that we have feelings about things, even if they're buried under nonstop sports watching and nonstop internet interactions, parasocial relationships. We have layers and layers and layers and layers of these superficial modes of relating and communication with people. But underneath, and especially in sports, everything in sports gets sublimated. All the feelings get sublimated. And the only one that's allowed is anger, but even that's not even allowed too much. It's a very repressed system, I would say, culture. And it was really nice to see, especially men, sportsmen who are especially masculine, cry, be upset, be visibly upset, be scared, and talk about being scared. And I think that's maybe what is most upsetting about it, is that most of us, almost all of us, have played sports at some point. And it's true. You can experience a severe life-changing or life-ending injury. I mean, even in baseball, it's happened. I mean, people have been killed playing baseball. It's really, I don't know. And seeing it live, seeing a real person suffer something like that in the moment is deeply, deeply affecting. I was upset for hours after I saw the video, and people around me thought that I was mad at them for something else. And I had to explain to them that I was just really upset by watching a football player fall to the ground and have to be resuscitated. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have all of my thoughts figured out on this, but I am glad, actually, number one, that he's okay, but I'm also glad that we had a moment where we could all think about our deepest feelings and feel them. Most importantly, feel them. That was nice to see that.
Yeah. So it's interesting that it manifested in rage for a lot of people and anger, and or at least that's what you saw on Twitter, at least.
Really? What were they mad about?
Well, the usual political grifters blamed certain things for it, like
the vaccine.
Yeah, the vaccine is one thing, but some race grifters are like, "Oh, black life doesn't matter to anybody," because here the NFL is considering going on with the game, and Skip Bayless just made a comment saying, this is a very important game for the season, but all of a sudden that doesn't matter anymore. And people misinterpreted that to think that, he actually cares about the game. And Skip Bayless is a disreputable sports journalist, to say the least. So people don't like him to begin with, and they just use that as an opportunity to pile on somebody they don't like while they're feeling sad. And a lot of people don't know how to process sadness, but also I think a lot of people, when it comes to sports, they don't understand what they're looking at anymore. Like our society has completely forgotten what sports are. All of our sports, especially the NFL and all these corporations, pretend that sports are safe when they're not. I mean, we try to make them as safe as possible, But at the end of the day, these are gladiators risking their lives, and we should be grateful for them to do that. And they, they signed on to do something dangerous, and we should honor them all the time for doing that for us. And when something like this happens, it is beautiful. It's sad, but it's beautiful, and it's part of the game. It's part of life,
Exactly. Well put. Yes, I concur heartily with all of that. I think it's 3 NFL players have been paralyzed. Darryl Stingley, there was an offensive lineman for the Lions who got paralyzed maybe in the 80s. I'm forgetting his name. And I guess, he's not paralyzed, but I guess it's only 2, and none have died. And that is absolutely amazing. I mean, the NFL has been around for about 60 years. Huge, very strong, very fast, very fierce men smashing into each other over and over again for 60 plus years. And one of them has died on the field. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Now, what's already happening, though, is what I've predicted for a long time. You may be noticing more and more names of players that are not American sounding, like a lot of African names, a lot of Nigerians playing in the NFL now and in college. And I think that's the trend, because there are fewer and fewer parents who are willing to let their kids play tackle football now. And so the NFL and the big colleges are going to have to find their players from outside the country, from poor countries where people are more willing to take big risks to make some money, right? This is what happens. I mean, they take risks to cross the border to get into the United States to make some more money. And I think this is the same case. I think that there will be more and more football players playing in this country who are from elsewhere, and especially from the third world. I think the NFL within 10 to 20 years will be largely a third world sport. But we'll see. I mean, there are also plenty of poor people I should say a lot of poor people in this country too, who are also willing to take risks for money. And this is why the NFL is 70% black. But I think even that's going to change. I mean, I think there will be fewer and fewer homegrown players of this sport that we love so much.
Yeah. I mean, that's always been the history of sports, especially boxing, right? That's why I love the history of boxing, right? Whatever the minority of the era is, that's who's the heavyweight champion of the world, right?
Exactly. Like, if people have read my book, they will know that the ethnic group that dominated boxing and basketball until World War II for the whole first half of the 20th century was Jews. Jews totally dominated both those sports, basketball and boxing. Jews held a number of world championships in boxing during that time. And the top 8, I think, scorers in the professional basketball league of that time were all Jewish. There were entirely Jewish teams in the 1920s and 30s, and they were badasses. They kind of invented the sport too in many ways. Jewish players in basketball invented a lot of the moves and style that became de rigueur in the post-war basketball world. So yeah, and that's because Jews before World War II were poor and lived in the hood, lived in the ghettos, and that's exactly right. It's the lowest classes that play our sports for us, because they are willing to do these things, and they have few other options.
Yeah. Somebody in the chat is asking why we're not talking about the vaccine injury aspect of it. I mean, here's the thing: is like we'll never know. What some people are saying is like he got hit like in between a heartbeat, and he made the hit in between a heartbeat, and it just sent a shock or something. But like, here's the thing: is personal health is so complicated, and yes, the rising number of athletes, especially soccer, fake football, who are experiencing cardiac arrest is alarming, and the vaccine is a factor in that we should consider. But this goes to what the Hoteps say is when something tragic happens, don't run to start your grift. Just go out there and put your humanity first, so you don't ruin any goodwill with anybody. But also personal health is so complicated that there's no idea. Like this could have happened for any reason. And here's another thing people aren't saying is that the NFL for years had a cardiac arrest protocol that they never had to use, and they executed it perfectly and saved his life.
Right. CPR. I mean, that's what freaked out so many of the players on the field. They were actually doing CPR on him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the vaccine thing. Okay. Listen, I was one of the few people kind of skeptical about everything concerning COVID, about the lockdowns, the masks, and the vaccine, all of it publicly. I've been there since the get-go. But people, we need to settle down a little bit about the vaccine. It's been now 2 years, right? 2 years of the vaccine.
I mean, yeah, all of 2021, all of 2022. Yeah, 2 years.
Yeah. So how many people have gotten the vaccine now? Like what, 4 billion or something like that, right? Half the world's population, something like that. It's in the billions. Okay. And then athletes have all gotten it because they're all forced to, except for Kyrie. Right. And so it's 2 years of playing sports, playing big violent sports with the vaccine in them. And we've had one possible negative consequence on the field, at least in the NFL. I know there was a Florida basketball player who collapsed about a year ago, but he's fine. And we don't even know if it's because of the vaccine. That's pretty slim evidence, people. And I'd like to see, I know about died suddenly. I haven't seen the movie, but I know about this meme. I haven't seen numbers. How many athletes have actually died in the last 2 years compared to the previous 2 years?
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that number? I haven't seen that number. You would think, you know, people, the anti-vaxxers would have that number ready at hand, but it doesn't seem to be available. And if they're so convinced so many players are dying suddenly, unexpectedly from the vaccine, produce some goddamn evidence, people, rather than just anecdotes.
Yeah.
And I'm with them. I'm with you. Listen, I'll be on my podcast first, if you have this evidence, for sure. I'm all with it, but I just haven't seen it. And I think there is, in that movement, the anti-vax movement, I think there is a degree of hysteria that needs to be dealt with because it's not helping. It's undercutting the cause.
You're losing the script when you do that.
Yes, exactly. The script is that we are opposed to forced vaccination. We are opposed to that part, but we're not saying that the vax itself is necessarily injurious.
Yeah, I mean, it's super hard to prove that a vaccine works. Nobody admits that, but it's hard. Like to prove that this is the intervention that caused cases to go down. It's, but it's also equally as hard to prove that a vaccine causes all these injuries. Like it's just hard to prove. And don't get offended in the chat for saying anti-vaxxer. We don't mean it as a fucking what's the word, epithet or whatever. It's just there are people who don't like vaccines. Don't take it personally.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying anti. They're opposed to the COVID vaccines. Yeah, they're anti-COVID vaccine. I don't mean that they're opposed. I mean, some are opposed to all vaccines.
It's pejorative. Thank you. Yeah, pejorative. Yeah.
It's not. Well, it's both. It's an epithet. It's used as an epithet and a pejorative, but I am not using it that way. This is just an objective description of who we're talking about. These are people who are opposed to this vaccine. That's anti-vax.
Yeah,
and I'm your friend. We're cool. I mean, I gained a big audience actually of these people over the last 2 years because as I said, I was one of the few in public life who was going hard against lockdowns and masking from the get-go, and so I gained a big audience of like anti-lockdown people. It's been interesting seeing them and seeing their politics change because of this. A lot of them got red-pilled through COVID. A lot of people got red-pilled because of COVID. In fact, including someone I used to know very, very closely, who used to appear on one of our shows. But and I mean, she was totally, like most of them, apolitical before COVID, but COVID just changed her mind about everything and she flipped. And I know many, many people like that who changed their politics. It's an interesting phenomenon, but I'm wondering what's going to happen to them after COVID leaves the scene. Are they going to stay political? Are they going to wait for the next pandemic to be political? Are they Are they going to go back to being sort of normie liberals or whatever they were? I don't know. But it's a big phenomenon. There's a lot of people in this country who are newly political and red-pilled because of it, because of COVID.
Yeah. I wonder where they'll go. That's the thing is yeah. It's like once you leave a box, there's always the safety and comfort of finding another box and thinking that that's home, when really your journey has just begun. And yeah, I'm glad that a lot of people woke up, but you know, keep questioning things. You know, use your skepticism everywhere, all the time.
That's it. That's exactly it. That's like all I want people to be, is just skeptical and curious. That's it. About everything. Please, please. That's all I need from you. I don't even care where you end up, you know, what your final position will be on some issue. I really don't care. I just want people to be skeptical and curious about every single thing. That's it. Okay, let's do the news.
Okay, yeah. This is kind of old hat. I do want to talk about the whole Tate arrest. So the story is, this happened last Thursday. He was picking a fight with Greta Thunberg on Twitter, and they had some catty back and forth in videos. And then the next day he gets arrested and on human trafficking charges in Romania. I'm not too concerned about the charges for him, because this has happened to him like several times before, and this is just part of following them, is that they get arrested every once in a while, and usually they get out of it pretty easily, and they brag about how corrupt Romania is and how you can bribe everybody, and that's why they live there. But maybe the Romanian government is serious and that they want to stop being embarrassed by having people who pretend to be open criminals just being so blatant about everything. And apparently the Romanian government has seized their cars. Yeah. There's a lot of angles to go on this. Well, here's what you were saying about it last week, is the persona of Tate isn't as fun as it may look, right, on the surface.
He just looks miserable all the time.
Yeah.
He looks very unhappy, angry and or sad all the time, and I've never seen the guy smile.
Okay, I've got some videos I'll show you of him smiling. I think he's it's tough to like gauge myself on this, because like I'm afraid he might be Sacha Baron Cohen. Like I'm afraid, like I don't know what's real and what's not with this guy. It's the most entertaining thing. I'm here for the ride. I don't give a shit about anything else except for the fact that I'm being entertained.
Okay.
I see him on par with Ric Flair and Andrew Dice Clay as some of the greatest chauvinist entertainers to ever live.
Okay. So, the politics of this thing we have to talk about. I mean, there's a few things happening politically here. There's, of course, the feminist backlash against the overt expressions of masculinity. That's what's going on here, in part, for sure.
Here, on that note, so this arrest was interesting because a lot of right-wingers were like, I'm done with this guy. And a lot of right-wingers, I mean, people who didn't like him to begin with, but a lot of people were celebrating this. And this really shows you the alliance that the religious right has with the feminists in hating fun.
There it is. That's what's going on here. So, Michael, don't you know he's a human trafficker? What is wrong with you? He's trafficking humans. He's a human trafficker.
Yeah.
And you're not worried about, he's a human. So no, he's not. He's a pimp.
Yeah.
He's a pimp.
A webcam pimp. A webcam pimp.
Maybe, whatever. And what he was doing was sex work. Prostitution. He was a pimp working with prostitutes. Okay. But this gets conflated with human trafficking or sex trafficking or sex slavery. Those are the terms that are used to describe prostitution now. And if you know anything about this issue, you know this has been happening for about 10 years now, that law enforcement agencies, all the way from the State Department and the FBI, all the way down to little sheriff's offices in Florida and all over the country and all over the world, have been deliberately labeling all acts of prostitution as human trafficking, in part to discredit prostitution yet again, and to make it, to continue making it illegal. The history of this is very important for people to know. If you do a Google search of the term human trafficking, you will find basically no references to that term before 2000. But in the late 90s, feminists, especially in the Democratic Party, especially those associated with Hillary Clinton, pushed for human trafficking to become a major issue for the Democratic Party and for liberals. And they managed, under the Clinton administration, to establish an entire office, an entire department within the State Department devoted to combating human trafficking. The number of references to human trafficking in the New York Times, in CNN, in the media, skyrocketed after 2000, when they established this department in the State Department, the Clinton administration. And then the Bush administration ran wild with it and started to prosecute lots and lots and lots of people. The thing is, there is not one case I am aware of in which the women were forced to sell sex. Forced. What I have seen is lots and lots of women who've been arrested, and pimps arrested and prosecuted for human trafficking or sex trafficking, who are engaged in simple prostitution. Adults engaged in consensual, voluntary transactions. But it's all called human trafficking now. The feminists in the 1990s got together with the evangelical Christians to go after, again, prostitution, because they saw a movement emerge among sex worker activists to destigmatize sex work and ultimately to decriminalize it, which we desperately need to do, by the way, still. They saw that happening, and to stop that from happening, they invented this whole category, this whole term called human trafficking. And you may have seen it all over the world, right? Ever since then, since 2000, you see human trafficking when you go to McDonald's, because there's a little box where you put the money in to donate to the human trafficking organization. There's posters and signs and all over the place. Human trafficking. See something, say something on the New York City subway. If you see human trafficking, here's the hotline to call. Airline attendants on all the airlines have been deputized to be basically anti-human trafficking cops on airplanes, and lots of people have been busted after stewardesses turned them in. In every single case I'm aware of, it was either nothing was going on illegal, or it was like a dad taking his daughter to Disney World, or it was simple prostitution with a pimp and a hooker. To adults. If it's children, of course, that's a separate category. That's totally different. I'm talking about adults engaged in prostitution. It all gets called human trafficking in order to make it sound really, really, really bad. And how could anyone be in favor of decriminalizing human trafficking? It's prostitution. Please, everyone, look it up. And I have still, to this day, not seen, and I've been researching this subject for about 20 years now, to this day, I have not seen one single solitary case in the United States, of a woman being forced against her will to sell sex. In other countries, yes. For children, yes. Although not in this country. In other countries, I've seen children, yes, being sold into sex slavery, yes. In India, for sure. In Thailand, for sure. In the United States, I have not seen evidence of anybody in any of these human trafficking cases being forced against their will to sell sex. It does not happen, at least in this country, or it happens so little it is statistically insignificant. Yet we are led to believe that there are hundreds of thousands of sex slaves among us. How could this be? It also completely denies women's agency. There are lots and lots of survivors of human trafficking who have made careers out of talking about prostitution and human trafficking. They all entered the business when they were adults, stayed in the business for years as adults. No one ever held a gun to their head, and no one ever threatened them. If they had been threatened with violence, that's sex trafficking. That's sex slavery. Of course. I've never seen evidence of that. A real threat, a real credible threat, violent threat. No. No. If we say that a woman can't help herself if a pimp tells her to sell sex, then we're saying that women are children. And we need to treat them the way that we treat children. We need to protect them from these men who can control their minds, apparently. The magic powers of the pimp. My friend Maggie McNeil talks about this all the time. The pimp is seen as this like magical, evil figure who controls women's minds. Like, wait a minute. There's no man who can control a woman's mind because they're women, they're adults. So that's what Andrew Tate is doing at worst. He's a pimp. Regular old pimp, and it's adult women who have chosen to go live in his house and do camming and maybe turn tricks and give him a cut of the pay. That's what's going on. It's not human trafficking. It's not sex slavery. And we need to shut the fuck up and get busy decriminalizing prostitution.
Okay. All right. This is where the postmodernists have something good to offer us in that the war is over language. Right?
Yeah.
So the
always.
Moralists are wanting to call it human trafficking. And then people like Maggie McNeil want to call it sex work. Me personally, I like the words prostitution, whore, hoe. I like those old words because most people understand what you mean when you say them. And it's and so I like speaking, as Gavin McInnes would call it, colorfully. And I wish we were allowed to talk about things with a certain sense of working class color to them instead of like acquiescing to a political battlefield of jargon all the time.
Indeed. It's always about language. If you win the language battle, you win the battle. Yeah. And that's unfortunately what the opponents of prostitution are doing. They're winning. But unfortunately, there are a lot of people sort of on my side generally about, they favor decriminalization of prostitution. They are buying this whole line about human trafficking, hook, line, and sinker, totally uncritically. People, I'm not going to name names, but you might know some people I'm referring to here. Some people I know personally, some people I've done shows with who are doing this, are pushing this human trafficking stuff to basically criminalize prostitution. That's what it's about. That's all they're doing. They're just trying to stop prostitution.
Well, here's the thing is, I think in their minds, it's okay if the woman is the only person involved in the business and like she's her own pimp and the CEO of her enterprise.
I don't believe that. No, they don't. No, they're not okay with that either.
Okay.
They do not like prostitution. No. I mean, even our libertarian friends, a lot of them who are for decriminalization still think it's terrible and icky and degrading. And no woman should do this, but they'll let it happen. They don't want to make it illegal, but they think it's a terrible thing for a woman to do. No. Wrong, dudes. Wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, that since you brought that up, I wanted to get to some of the criticisms that we had about our sex work talk. Basically, a lot of people were saying that there's evolutionary reasons for us to react with disgust about a woman having several partners. And just the visceral feeling of jealousy that you might feel that comes from somewhere, or not even jealousy, but disgust. Germs is part of it. Fathership is part of it. It's not something that it's dangerous. It's not something you'd want somebody doing. And sure, the thing that you have to contend with, though, is that modern technology has gotten rid of most of those concerns. Like, you could say that sex is sacred and that it leads to a child. Sure, yes, I agree with that. But like, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your perspective, technology has pretty much gotten rid of that, in that it's very easy to responsibly not have a child through sex. And you know, do you believe in your worldview that we should acquiesce to our impulses and our instincts, or should we use reason and ration and logic to rise above them? You know,
are you sympathetic to evolutionary psychology?
I'm, in some ways, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we're a sexually dimorphic species. I agree with that. And I agree that a lot of things, yeah, that there are certain patterns and behaviors that would lead us to propagate more. And that makes sense for why we feel certain ways and do certain things. A lot of it is junk science, and it's hard to pin down. I totally agree with you on that. And with genetics in general, I'm always skeptical in that how much stuff can be reversed within one generation. And epigenetics, which genes are activated. Like, I think we're born with a lot of genes that could do something or another, but they don't matter unless they get activated by experience. So a lot of them overstate their claims, but I'm certainly sympathetic to the basic thesis.
I think it's witchcraft.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's nonsensical. It's almost offensive to me how stupid it is. Do I believe in cultural evolution? Of course, you know, that cultures learn something from a failure and then adapt, and then a norm is created based on that. Sure. You know, like 500 years ago, my ancestors in the shtetl in Poland, you know, it was economically advantageous to have a wife and to have a wife be loyal to you. I get it. Okay. So they built laws to promote marriage and families and all that stuff. Sure, I get it. And those norms have been passed down. And so to this day, we still have pro-marriage, pro-family norms that were created basically for economic survival reasons hundreds of years ago, for sure. But that my DNA has something in it that tells me to be jealous when my woman looks at another man, and that comes from hundreds or thousands of years ago from my ancestors, from their experiences. It's just farcical. I mean, and not to mention that there are plenty of people who are not jealous. I mean, there's whole like subcultures of people who are really not jealous. You know, it's called polyamory. I mean, this is a thing. This is a growing thing too. Polyamory is becoming more and more popular. I know some people are still jealous in polyamorous relationships, but those people, generally speaking, are not jealous. That's why they begin polyamorous relationships. It's just that there's some like imprint, some permanent imprint from what happened hundreds or thousands of years ago in my psyche. What? Come on now, people.
Okay.
Who better? Not
yeah.
you. I mean them.
Yeah. So here's what it boils down for me, and why I like Foucault a lot, is that Foucault forces you to ask yourself the question, what do I actually want? When it comes to your sexual practices, when it comes to just about literally everything. And a lot of people have never asked them that question. But it's funny, I think that if a lot of left-wing people ask themselves that question and honestly answer it, they might see that what they actually want is politically incorrect and might be, you know, culturally right-wing, might be something that they would never want to admit to themselves because of it's not allowed in their polite society. So that's what makes me open to certain claims about evolutionary biology.
Psychology.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, when we, you know, we can talk about, you know, all the surveys done on women's sexual preferences, what they like, what they fantasize about, what they want, you can't have that conversation. You can't even, it's hard to have it in public, to even talk about that in public, because it just smashes to the ground 60 years of feminism. I mean, turns out that a solid majority of women, and it might be like an overwhelming majority, but it's a solid majority of women at least, want things sexually that feminists find despicable. Despicable. Horrendous. Thoroughly patriarchal in the worst ways. What are we going to do with that when most women want the opposite of what feminism tells them to want? What are we going to do with that?
Mm-hmm. And what's the feminist take on that? You know, should we deny women what they want, or should
no? Well, you know what the feminist take is? Again, it denies women's agency. Those women have internalized the patriarchy,
internalized misogyny, internalized patriarchy. Yep, there's always a man at the end of a feminist take. Yeah,
that's right. It's exactly right. Exactly. The men are the cause of everything, which means we are the most important, powerful people. Wow.
Yeah.
Feminism is so often the opposite of what it claims to be. It's the opposite of what it claims to be.
It's the same shit as anti-racism, right? White people are the responsibility for everything that black people go through, right? We're the only people who can save them, and we're totally doomed to keep oppressing them till the end of time.
We determine their destiny. Mm-hmm. The destiny of black people is in our hands. Mm-hmm. It's up to white people. We're the ones who oppress them. We're the ones who can free them. Mm-hmm. They cannot do it themselves. Women and black people cannot save themselves. They can't help themselves. It is entirely up to white men. And people saying that claim to be on the side of black people and women. Fascinating, because I think they are their worst enemies. As a matter of fact, if you tell me that I have no agency, that I can't help or save myself, that to improve my life, the only way to do it is for someone else to do it for me, what exactly are you doing to me? You're destroying me. Mm-hmm. You're destroying me as an individual, a sovereign, autonomous individual. That's over. I am no longer my own person. I am at the mercy of the rest of the world. Good Lord.
Yeah. Sorry to bring it back to Tate, but this experience was a L for him, I think.
He's in jail, isn't he? He's still in jail, isn't he?
I don't know if the country of Romania is even a real place. Okay. It's why is he tweeting? You know?
Mm-hmm. It's a bad look for Romania too. They don't look like much of a nation state, do they?
Yeah. But yeah, the Hoteps pointed this out, and Hotep Jesus was talking. Going after Greta Thunberg is a dumb move, and a suspiciously dumb move, because you're punching down. If you're top G, there's no reason for you to go after a 19-year-old girl. Like, that's beneath you. You don't need to start that argument. Of course, Greta Thunberg is wrong about everything, but don't start a fight with a 19-year-old girl on Twitter. It's stupid. Okay.
Oh yeah. Terrible.
But second of all, you're also dangerously punching up, because Greta Thunberg's handlers actually run the world. And if you touch that girl, the weight of the world will crush down on you.
That is correct. That is correct. I've heard from several people that the Romanian authorities generally don't give a shit about prostitution or human trafficking or any of that stuff, and don't do anything about it. Why they did this, it's not because of Greta, I'm sure, but it most certainly is because of the West. The West somehow must have been putting some pressure on them in some way or another, as part of the State Department anti-human trafficking campaign. I'll bet you anything. They heard from the State Department. The Clintons, ultimately, Hillary Clinton, I kid you not, is going to be behind this, because she created that department. She created that department in the Department of State, the anti-human trafficking department, and she's been the guiding spirit for it since then. And they they interact with foreign governments all the time, and they always have a list of requests or demands. You're going to continue to get foreign aid, and you can stay in NATO if you prosecute human traffickers, meaning pimps. I'll bet you $1.5 zillion that is what happened.
Yeah. Oh, it's weird. Yeah.
It's all foreign policy, man. I'm telling you. When you live inside a superpower, the global hegemonic superpower, almost every issue ends up being a foreign policy issue. And that's what this is. The Andrew Tate thing is a foreign policy issue. I guarantee it. State Department's behind this somewhere.
Yeah, because the Taliban loves Andrew Tate. Like,
do they really?
Yeah, they do. Legitimately, yeah.
I didn't know that.
A lot of people think that Andrew Tate is a psyop to feminize Islam.
Why is that? How's that?
He's a boyish vision of masculinity. He basically advertises fornication, advertises pimping and prostitution, advertises consumerism, all of the worst values of the West, but also claims to be a Muslim and also claims to respect Allah and to be hyper masculine. So a lot of people think that his actual purpose is that he's sent by the CIA or somebody to feminize Islam and neutralize that threat.
No, he's not a fed. He's just a dummy.
Yeah.
And he's not even a dummy. I mean, he's caught up in this perpetual adolescence, which is becoming more and more popular among our young men and women too, I think. But he's an adolescent. I mean, that's what an adolescent does. I mean, you walk around bragging about how great you are when you're a teenager. That's what boys do, and they judge their success on how much money they have and how big their muscles are and how many chicks they have. It's just high school locker room culture in perpetuity. I mean, and I've been uninterested in that since high school. I was even uninterested in it in high school. It's part of this sort of manosphere shit that I can't stand, that you and I have talked about a lot. I just don't like it, and I wish it would go away. And I wish in the meantime we could have some conversations with some of these guys, because they're not happy. And so if you're selling something, I want to know that it's going to make me happy. This version of masculinity seems to make you all miserable. No, thank you. I'd rather be gay and happy. That's what gay means, for one thing.
Well, I do think Tate might be gay. Like, I don't mean that as an insult either. I think that when he's happy, he's so genuinely happy. And when he's around women, there's like no sexual energy at all. You know what I mean? Like there's no sparks flying. It's completely transactional. It's completely So
I have the same thought about somebody else in the manosphere. I guess he's attached to the manosphere. Bronze Age pervert. I have noticed, and I've been listening to his podcast a lot lately, and we taught his book in a course at Unregistered Academy, which you can still watch. The guy I've never heard him say anything suggesting sexual attraction to women, but he talks all the time about sexually attractive men, puts pictures of them all over the place on his Twitter feed, talks about them in his book. Never once have I heard him say anything about a woman being sexually or physically attractive, ever. I just don't know if he's gay, but he sure doesn't seem to be heterosexual. I mean, I will say this. Well, then he just said this thing on Twitter the other day. What was it? Did you see that about how women's bodies are never aesthetic? They're only utilitarian.
That's the exact opposite take. That is the men are the utilitarians and women are the aesthetic. I mean, right?
Women's bodies are never aesthetic. I'm like, speak for yourself, bro. Those of us who are heterosexual men, we think they're very aesthetic. Yes, thanks though. I mean, how can you can't be heterosexual. He may not be gay, but he ain't heterosexual.
Yeah. Man, and
which is really funny. I mean, the leader of the alt-right never mentions women being sexually attractive. I mean, his army, as we all know, is an army of incels. So maybe that's what he's doing. He's just playing to his audience.
Yeah.
But I don't know what to do with that, but it sure is striking to me. With everybody else, you know, you sort of every once in a while, you just hear something, you know, that's heterosexual, right? You sort of hear them say that some woman's beautiful or hot or something, you know, or they mention some past relationship they had or something, right?
Yeah.
But no, not with him.
So are you familiar with waifu watchers?
Yes, part of that. That's part of that crew, the manosphere, weird alt-right frog Twitter.
You know who I'm talking about? This guy, waifu watchers.
Oh, that's one person.
This is one person. Yeah.
Oh no, I know waifu. I know waifu watching as a
yes
as an activity. Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm going to show you this video. Andrew Tate loves him. Okay. This is important too because the #1 search on Pornhub, the Mind Geek numbers were out for 2022. Guess what the #1 search was?
Oh no. What?
It was hentai.
So I'm dead.
I think culturally this is a huge point because like
I'm fucking dead.
Fantasies aren't even about real people anymore. That's crazy, right? Like
fuck this world, man. I'm out of here. I can't. That's really, it's the cartoonification of human life. Like everything's a goddamn cartoon. People dress up like cartoons, cosplay. They watch porn is all cartoons. They are sexually attracted primarily to cartoon characters. I mean, I've heard many men say this. There's a lot of men. Their primary attraction is to cartoon characters. They jerk off to anime, not to real women.
Okay.
I'm dead. Okay, what?
Ladies and gentlemen, waifu watchers.
If your anime waifu is underage, you're a sick creep and should be locked up.
Is this guy cool? What's your reaction?
Is he cool?
Yeah.
Oh boy. No, of course not.
He's got sick dance moves though. He's dressed like a cowboy. He's got some fashion sense, sick dance moves. He edited that all himself. And it's genuinely hilarious. Like,
I'll say it's subversive for sure. But you know, as I say in page 4 or 5 of my book, you know, not all subversive things are things that I like. You know, some things I don't want to subvert. One of them is heterosexual relations between adult men and adult women. I'm all for that. And he's not. Well, I mean, why do I care that some dude sits in front of his computer all day jerking off to pictures of underage cartoon characters? I don't even know what the fuck that is, but is that true though? Well, anyway,
don't. Yeah. Well, again, it's not about jerking off. This is your actual wife. You watch them in a serialized episodic anime. You develop real human feelings for that person, and
oh, you Zoomers! What am I gonna do with you people? Okay.
Anyways, Tate loves this guy, thinks he's absolutely hilarious. He's flown him out to Romania
really?
a couple times. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I was on this guy's side too, because just I love seeing somebody so brazen, and so it's hilarious. And he would like post DMs, because I got some massage. I'm a member of the He-Man Woman Haters Club sometimes, and he would post DMs that he'd get from women, like, "Oh, I saw you with Andrew Tate. That's so cool. You want to hit me up later? Oh, oh, you're such a cool cowboy with great dance moves. What's going on? You know, I know you're not into real girls, but could you make an exception?" And every time he shuts them down. I don't talk to real girls, 2D only. And that's hilarious. And it's mocking a female behavior, where how many times have you seen a guy's DMs to a woman's get blasted out and they get embarrassed for being rejected? So
Right.
Part of me likes that, but also I don't know where the joke ends. And if this guy never actually meets a human being, it's profoundly sad, despite how aesthetically on point he is.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's just sad.
Yeah.
It's further atomization of people, further alienation from other people. It is, it's the trend that's been going on for a while now. This is kind of the apotheosis of that, where we are actually, our relationships, our intimate, loving, romantic, and sexual relationships are with 2D figures on a computer screen. I mean, aren't we lonely from this? Don't we feel like an emptiness inside of us? Don't we want human touch? Don't we want to touch other people? You know, hug, forget sex, just touching. You don't want to hug every once in a while? You want to like sleep with someone? It feels really good, you know?
This
want to do that?
Yeah. This is where I think like the go out and get laid advice that Gavin and you sometimes give might fall a little short, because a lot of people just need baby steps. Like, when was the last time you had like an actual conversation with somebody of the opposite sex? You know, like that wasn't just work, or, you know, that like you actually tried to get to know somebody. When was the last time you held hands? You know, like I think a lot of people need some baby steps. Just because, honestly, human contact was illegal for the last 2 years. So there's that in our culture.
Well, okay, there's taking baby steps, and then there's putting your foot inside reality. I mean, it's and celebrating this pseudo sex, this pseudo romance, this pseudo love. That's what he's doing. He's celebrating it.
Yeah.
And I understand he's making a point, which is actually, I think it's a valid and important point. Yes. About the imbalance between men and women and all the romanticization of all these things and yada yada. I get that. I mean, there's a valuable point in there, but to celebrate it the way he does just makes me even more sad, and I'm glad I'm not him.
Well, here's the thing. It's the Foucault question. Is this what you really want? And that's what makes me fall in line that this isn't completely socially constructed, and that there might be something real to our desires that's deeper than whatever world we were born into.
Let me say this. Thank you for bringing that up. Let me say this. So I don't think there's any real or true or good sexual desire. If you like anime characters, fine. It just makes me sad, and I know that I want something more in life. That's all. But not in no way judge it. I mean, there's all sorts of sexualities. I don't judge any of them. Well, I judge some of them, but you know, most of them I don't judge, and certainly not this. But it's just sad, and I don't want it for myself, and I prefer that people in my life not do it also, because I want to be in a social life where people are close to each other, physically, emotionally, and otherwise. And you know, there's obviously zero emotional content with a fucking cartoon character.
Yeah,
there's nothing. You can't get anything from them human wise. So it's all fucking depressing. All right, we got 14 minutes, and we have to talk about foreign policy, because that's
yeah. Okay.
We talk about sex with anime characters, and then we talk about Syria and Turkey.
Yeah. Okay. Why is Syria and Turkey important? What happened? Please. I'm the undisciplined 26-year-old who spends all of his time looking up Andrew Tate videos. You tell me why Syria and Turkey is important.
Yeah, so we talked about Saudi Arabia joining forces with China and by extension Russia a couple weeks ago. This is almost as momentous. It might be as momentous. So the United States right now is incapable of occupying, invading, doing anything significant in the Middle East. So what happened is that all the foreign and defense ministers of Syria and Turkey have been having meetings for many days now in preparation for a big meeting between Assad, the head of Syria, and Erdogan, the head of Turkey. They have been enemies since the Syrian civil war began about, 12 years ago? Turkey took the side of the United States against the Assad government, but now there's this major rapprochement between the two. They are getting ready to form an alliance, Syria and Turkey, which most importantly for us means they are leaving. Turkey is leaving the American alliance. They are no longer going to be our allies. In fact, they are now our enemies. So now look at the map and look at what's been happening in global politics recently in the Middle East. You now have Iran joining with Russia. You have Saudi Arabia joining with China and Russia. Now you have, and then you had Syria already joined with Russia. They were allies of Russia. And now Turkey, for God's sake. Turkey is a member of NATO. Turkey is a member of NATO and is now de facto establishing an anti-American alliance with Syria and Russia and all these other countries. Iran, all these countries, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Syria, and Turkey. Those are four large countries with very large armies. And collectively, other than Israel, they control the Middle East. The United States has nowhere to put its military bases there anymore. They can no longer put all their military equipment and soldiers inside Saudi Arabia and launch attacks on Arab countries like we did with Iraq. Can't do that. There's no place for the United States to go in the Middle East anymore. We are being thrown out. The United States is being thrown out of the Middle East. Israel is basically our only serious ally now in the Middle East. This is, of course, I mean, I don't know why we're not talking about this stuff all day, every day, right? We used to talk about the Middle East and the United States and the Middle East all the time, and everybody was very concerned about this, or worse. This was our obsession for a long time, as it should have been. It was the worst thing the United States had done in a long time. Well, guess what? That's all ending because the United States is being thrown out of the region. They can no longer wage any serious military operations in the Middle East. I mean, except they could do bombing runs, I suppose, but they can't put any troops on the ground anywhere. They can't have any bases anywhere. They can't do invasions, occupations, and regime change anymore in the Middle East. This is a huge deal. And of course, at the same time, Russia and China continue to rise. They continue to build power. They continue to forge relationships and alliances with powerful, large countries all around the world who have big armies and a lot of oil. So Russia, China, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Syria, Brazil, all now basically essentially part of BRICS. And when that becomes a formal military alliance, that military, that combined military, is more powerful than, yes, the American military. Way more infantry troops, way more soldiers to invade countries with and occupy them with. Air forces and navies that are getting really close to as powerful as the Americans. China has just launched a new aircraft carrier just the other day, and they've got more in the works. This is a massive global game changer. The world we live in is radically changing. The world I was born into will no longer exist very shortly. The liberal post-war rules-based order is about to die. And I don't know exactly what the consequence will be, except in the short term, Erdogan better up his security presence because the US, the CIA is going to try to kill him in some way or another, indirectly or otherwise. Erdogan has lots of enemies in Turkey, and they're going to be getting direct assistance from the CIA now. Who knows? There could be wars over this split, although it looks to me like the Middle East is pretty much going to be a monopoly now, controlled by those countries I just named and not the United States. Wow. No, it's really stunning. And I know it's very complicated. The Syrian civil war in itself is super complicated. That's the basic story. And that's really all you need to know, is that the United States has been losing allies in crucial parts of the world to our enemies, Russia and China. And it's a whole new, the map isn't being redrawn essentially around the world. And who knows what's going to come out of it, but it will not be the American century anymore.
Dude, we could have world peace if we would just make our own oil and sell it to Russia and China.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. There's so many things we could do. I mean, all Russia, the thing that's just utterly disgusting about all of this is that every single one of these countries, you know what they want to do most of all with the United States? Trade. That's what they want to do. They don't want to fight us. Same with Japan in the 1930s. All Japan wanted to do, the government of Japan overwhelmingly wanted to trade with the United States forever. Same now. Russia, China, all these countries, they just want to trade with us. We have a lot to offer. They have a lot to offer to us. But no, the U.S. needed to be the global unchallenged hegemon. They needed to change the lives of everyone. They needed to make sure that everybody in the world lives the way that we do, killing lots and lots of people in the process. And guess what? They did all that. They launched all those wars all over the world over the last 100 years, killed lots of people. And look what it got them. Nothing. They are now losing everything. They're losing their control of the fucking Middle East. Very important region. Mm-hmm. And they're about to lose control of Eastern Europe too. So also NATO's going to split. So if Erdogan goes through with this deal with Syria, which I'm sure he will, looks like it, he's going to have to get kicked out of NATO. Turkey's going to have to get kicked out of NATO, which is the first time NATO has expelled a member. And there's already major tensions within NATO around Ukraine. As many people like Doug McGregor, Scott Ritter predicted before the war, when the war started, this will cause the end of NATO. And here we go. Here we go. It's already happening. And we're on our way. Buckle up, everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Buckle up.
Again, yeah. I mean, Malice just released the white pill. And I think the thesis of that is, I haven't read it yet, but he's talked about it a lot. I think his thesis on that is, it doesn't have to be World War III. It doesn't have to be Civil War Part 2. It can be a peaceful divorce, right? Who's to say that NATO can't collapse completely internally the same way the Soviet Union collapsed, and every country just goes back to defending themselves?
Yeah, I mean, that could happen. I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, alliances are very useful, as often they are necessary, for a nation state's survival. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I think there will be more alliances instead of just one alliance. There's been one alliance since 1991, after the Warsaw Pact went down the tubes. It's been NATO. It's been basically the United States plus all its friends. That's the alliance. But now there's going to be at least another one, and there might be more than one in addition to this. So BRICS is happening. God damn. I mean, I think this time next year, I think BRICS, these countries will have a formal alliance, a formal military alliance in which they pledge to protect each other if they're attacked. My goodness. Then it's a whole new game.
Yeah, man. There's one thing I want to bring. I don't know if I should repeat this about Ukraine. I don't want to pile on them too hard, but just the propaganda against Russia right now is the most terrifying thing for me personally. Damn, there's so much more I want to talk about. But
go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, you go.
Well,
ahead,
let me just say one. Yeah. There's a bit of a news story too, mm-hmm. Or it's possibly a news story that's relevant to what you're saying here. The rhetoric against Russia is not just rhetoric now. I mean, it's also probably direct military action against Russia by the United States that is secret. So in 2016, after the election, you know, when Russiagate was going crazy, Obama authorized the CIA to conduct covert operations against Russia inside Russia. This is 2016. This is way before the Ukraine war.
Mm-hmm.
Authorized the CIA to conduct covert operations inside Russia against Russia. We got a report by this guy named Jack Murphy, who's former Special Operations Forces, who's now a writer, journalist, and Scott Ritter says he's basically, you know, credible. He's wrote this whole long piece that just came out a couple days ago, in which he says to have talked to several senior CIA officials who say that a lot of these mysterious explosions that have been happening in Russia since February, lots of stuff, lots of infrastructure stuff in Russia is blown up and no one has any explanation for it since the war in Ukraine started.
Well, everybody knows the Russians are crazy and they're just bombing their own shit. Everybody knows that.
Yeah, right. They bombed their own pipeline, even though they could have just turned it off themselves at any point. No, this guy says that these CIA officers, they're unnamed, so, you know, this is not for sure, but he says that it's the CIA has been directing a campaign of sabotage inside Russia since February, blowing up bridges and electrical plants and all that stuff. If that's true, and also these military strikes against the Engels Air Base in Russia, which has their strategic nuclear bombers, that's what's at the Engels base. There have been 2 massive missile attacks on that air base in the last 2 weeks, killing, I think, 5 people total. Very dangerous, of course. They're bombing planes that are armed with nuclear weapons. Ukraine has claimed responsibility for it, but everybody I've ever heard of from on this insists that the United States had to have given the authorization, if not the coordinates for this. You know, if they didn't direct it themselves. I said, I'm sure, pretty sure that the CIA or somebody in the United States gave them authorization to bomb that air base and help them do it. Now, if either one of these things is true, if the CIA has been conducting a covert sabotage campaign in Russia, or if the CIA helped them bomb this airbase, that is obviously direct military confrontation. That is war with Russia. And if Russia can show this to be true, if Russia just believes it to be true, what will they do in response? I mean, they will have a legitimate claim to start a real war with us. I mean, if we're attacking them in that way, they have every right, according to international law, to retaliate. And you want to get scared? Think about that for a little while.
Yeah. And that's why I'm a little optimistic that BRICS won't formalize as a military alliance. I think there's too much infighting. I think that all these countries just want to get rich together, and the West isn't offering them an avenue to do that. But I think once it comes to fighting, there's a lot of internal, like these people don't like each other, like that, to where
maybe not.
Maybe
not. So, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, it's Muslims and Orthodox Christians and Easterners and Northerners and Westerners and all sorts of people in BRICS. But for now, that's the team to bet on.
Yeah.
Long term. All right, we got to go. So after every Unreported, Michael and I join patrons on Unregistered at Unregistered Live. It's an awesome, hilarious, fun Zoom meeting that we have immediately after Unreported every Thursday night. And all you have to do is become a patron at any level by going to patreon.com/unregistered. Patreon.com/unregistered. Become a patron at any level, and you'll see the URL link right there. And you can come and hang out with us on Thursday nights. And that's where we're going to go.
The
Michael,
Romanian government.
It's been awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say the Romanian government shut down Hustlers University. So if you have an extra $50 a month laying around, you should probably go on patreon.com/unregistered, where we give you all the secrets on how to be a real G.
Redistribute that money. Nice.
Yeah.
Well done. All right, Michael. I will
Nice.
see you on the other side.
Peace. See ya.